Hello. What's up, Zion? What's up, world? Well, in this particular video, we're going to talk about building, right? We're going to talk about building and discuss fundamentals and stuff, right? But before we get to that, first I would like to utilize these aspects here that came up in this talk, right? And we're gonna go over each one of them, right? And try to, right, at least I'll try to give my opinion about why it is the way it is, right? I'll try to give the short answer so as we can save time, right? So higher property prices, just like in the video he said, of course it is because we stopped building. Why? Because wealth, right? People didn't want to share their wealth, and there is wealth to be generated in scarcity, right? Artificial scarcity, that is. That's why the property prices are high. On top of that is they have just made it, using policies, they have literally made it harder for people to actually build housing, right? To build housing, right? Because they already have a plan, right? To do what, for instance, the communist Russians did, right? And it failed catastrophically, right? Block housing and all that, right? Inflation and quality of life. Inflation is because of production, low production, right? America right now, it's crying and this and that, and nobody's paying attention, right? You say that there's an equal trade, and these people are importing, right? They're basically exporting to you than you are to them. Well, how about you work on things that you could sell to others? How about that approach instead of tariffs, right? Which again have a tendency to do, or to, I don't know, trigger high inflation, high stock market valuation. This comes to where people choose to invest, but I say it is more of a gambling addiction, and that gambling addiction comes hand in hand with immediate gratification. That's why even the youth nowadays are trading in stock, right? With whatever little cash. It's a game right now, right? It literally came from sports betting to stock. Literally, that's the trend. People who are good at stocking at one point, they did partake in sports betting, right? Because it is betting, right? And that immediate gratification is what even pulled people into Bitcoin and all of that, right? Economic growth, I think we've already talked about that, right? Euthanasia, right? This is a symptom of spiritual decay, right? People don't find any purpose to move on, right? Where you can 10,000 people, 10,000 people killed in a year by a system. Not that I can't even. Mass migration. I've talked about this in depth. What, for instance, let's talk about Libya, right? This is an example. We can talk about Libya, right? NATO, despite the African Union and African presidents advising otherwise about attacking Libya and ousting Gaddafi, NATO did not listen, okay? NATO has NATO members, okay? And then NATO attacked Libya and destabilized Libya, and that caused a cascading of events that destabilized that whole northern region of Africa, literally. And this is where the majority of people that go into Europe come from. So it is a thing that Europeans should stop maybe messing with other people's countries if you don't want to cry about migration, right? It's cold over there. We don't like it. Trust me, we don't. Okay, we come over there because you destabilize our countries. You destabilize our countries, and then there is no growth, and then we have to move, right? Lower birth rates. What do you, for instance, do you think Japan, for instance, doesn't have women? These people are eluding the core problem, right? These white males out here using politics and policies to suppress other races, to even go as far as to kill in order to reduce their population so as they can maintain their economic dominance, right? Like I said many times in this video before, these here videos, that of course indeed the final form of these people, they're gonna do what they did during the colonial times. They're gonna get their youth and rally them up and say, okay, now we have to go and raid Africa or anywhere else, like right, they're trying to raid Russia right now, right? So the bigger question, that people or these individuals are avoiding is confronting their women. Why aren't they preferring to have children? It's not that there's the shortage of women out there, no, or shortage of men, no. That's not, no. There's even not shortage of medical facilities. Why is it that these third world countries, so-called, produce more people than the first world class? What is it? Right? It's a combination of many things, including spiritual corruption. Basically, that leads to selfishness, and that leads to desire for immortality. And if you are immortal, then really you don't think about nothing but yourself, right? Great public and private debts. Well, it's a scam, and the scam is to keep people on this what do they call it, the little mice in the spinning wheel, right? You know that? Right? They need to keep people on that treadmill that never ends, right? If you need to be very careful when you are talking about debt and all of this, right? Because if you were to examine where the money that was lent is spent, you'd have a different opinion at the end of the road, right? Look at the whole thing as a whole, and you're gonna see that it is just like the bankers during World War I or II. They are just paying both sides and basically doing what they do best, which is gamble, in that case with human life, right? Bureaucratic gaslighting, right? Of course, the elites have to make it harder to ascend up the ladder. Why? Because you ascending up the ladder means you take part of their cake. So it is in their best interest not to enable you in any way to make it using your full potential, right? Privatization, asset stripping, and other symptoms, right? They say, what do they say from the WF? You'll have nothing and be happy. This is that process, right? They have created these artificial conditions. If then they're artificial, they need to be examined and countered. Full stop, right? So that covers that. Then what is it? Why does this thing keep happening, right? Well, it is because, for instance, in the case of France, right? In the case of France, is because of colonial exploitation. That's where it is right now, right? That is the most straight up answer I could give you. That and pure theft, right? These people, these individuals knew that the boat was sinking for a long time, but they lied to you so that they could accumulate wealth for themselves and, of course, take that wealth somewhere else. And like I said, if you want to know them, you just have to wait. The system will spew them out, right? Because everything gravitates toward them, right? This is how they set up society, that the wealth of society gravitates towards them. And at the end of the day, we're going to have questions like, okay, this is our wealth. Then what happened, right? What happened? What I'm trying to say is this. Why these trends? All of the above are the answers That is the problem that we have today. It's not one single thing, it is all of those things over there, right? Neoliberalism plays its ways, techno-feudalism has its role, but it is all headed to one, or they are rather taking all the same trajectory, right? Which is your enslavement. And you, I mean, we, in that case, are enabling our own enslavement, so to speak, right? Of course, they are the beneficiaries, right? They are the beneficiaries, but I say this. I think they are individuals because they are middlemen, right? Because they are middlemen, the most important role of a middleman is to connect one side and the other side, right? So the opposite of that would be in the best of their interest, which is countries being disconnected and disoriented politically and having different or opposing ideologies and this and that, right? This opposing parallel ideologies that they have even created here in Africa, right? I showed you that homosexual map from BBC, right? That shows their war which they are waging, right? And if you see that it's the same thing, right? They have divided themselves into spheres of influence, and these spheres of influence have opposing ideologies. At the end of the day, these opposing ideologies are worth something, right? When the conflict is cold, right? They are worth something, and some individuals benefit, right? But and when it turns hot, some other individuals also benefit, right? But the escalation is outside of the people, right? Outside of the masses, right? The innocent. So this is the case that we find ourselves in, right? So to build, right? Where do we begin? Since we are trying, at least that's what I'm saying, to build more bridges than burn them, right? This is the first step, right? Now into the important aspects that if worked upon would yield results like faster, right? And that is the first and these are the following, in my opinion, right? We have iron / steel, we have trade, right? And we have energy, and then we have technology, right? These aspects, right? They might be intertwined, they might be whatever, but these are the things that if worked upon will yield because think about it, right? Trains, ships, aircraft, all of these things, they need iron and steel. You can't have nothing without these, just look around. I say the same thing with the plastic, right? I have all of these individuals that say you can even find plastic particles in your reproductive I don't know, it feels it feels stupid, okay, to say, but again, here we are. And I said, okay, it's fine. Okay, I say, okay, you, whatever you are, just look around and look at how much plastic is around you and tell me what are you going to replace them with. And 9 out of 10 the alternative is worse. Just look at paper straws and hygiene, right? So iron, steel, these are key. The industry needs to be like, right now the technology is there. There's you can cut steel with water or light, right? With water, light, and what, plasma. So much technology, right? I've seen so much stuff, right? I've seen melting machines, old and new, right? I've seen mining equipment, old and new, right? So I don't think this should be a problem, right? Those countries that have iron should be pushed, and a specific investment should be made on the procurement and the processing of iron and steel for various users, right? Which again need to reinforce that same basis, that is interconnectedness, right? Trade, that will fix everything, right? The population issue, the employment issue, the everything, right? Trade is a very, very deep thing, right? This exchange is a very deep thing, right? Our ancestors understood this, right? Because then we see that they let trade evolve into something else, right? Because it is organically, it is to evolve like that, right? So trade, and China in Africa is like undefeated, importing their goods without any form of like, it's crazy. We can take our goods to them without them charging us any form of import taxation and stuff like that, right? That's at least the laugh phrasing I would give it, right? And these are the steps that are much appreciated now, right? Because this then will open up even more doors into other potentials, right? And energy aspect, right? I don't think private companies should have any business to do with energy. That's just my opinion. And the same thing with water, right? Just keep them the freak away, PPP, nah. Okay, they can deal with a component, but not the whole thing, right? This should be a state such situation, right? And I'm seeing like all of these projects popping up everywhere, right? With atomic energy, alternative energies, and all of these things, right? Even though my obvious reservations when it comes to lithium, right? And of course, due to this interconnectedness, or rather absence of, there's been nations that have been lacking behind, Russia and Tanzania, for instance, or Russia and any other country in Africa cannot have a comprehensive interconnectedness, because one is lacking so far behind over the other, right? Why? Mainly because of technology and technology exchange, right? Basically, the one side is learned and more open, right? That's what information does, right? It opens up your mind to new possibilities, right? In variety of fields, right? And lack thereof, you see now the accumulation of people in specific fields, right? Because there are no alternatives, right? They are behind, so to speak, right? So you find a country full of lawyers, you find a country full of business people, you find a country full of a majority of a very specific group of people who have chosen a certain cause of life. Why? Because it is, I don't know, it increases the possibility of them being employed, right? So the baseline can be widened by technology, right? The baseline can be widened by technology, right? And universities can play a big role, right? For Tanzania, they have increased their scholarship and stuff, right? Which is a good thing. The Russians, right, have taken some of our people and to go and give them advanced education that they cannot be given here, right? And these are the things that need to increase exponentially, right? Because all of these saturated professions, these people need to relearn. They need to relearn something, right? This is just the reality, right? So then the vocation situation comes in, right? And this has to be like across the board, vocation needs to be made exciting, right? And the new thing, because if people see that if they take a vocation training, then they become hopeful, right? Because now they are hopeless, running low on hope. Right? At least they would see the light, because the industries are now churning. There is something to do, housing to build, construction, and here and there, and this and that, research and development, right? The potential is basically limitless, right? If you were to take the scientists from all the friends over here and put them in a single room, right? Trust me, some brilliant things will come up, right? And that's what we need to fix, so to speak, right? So anyway, let me put a pin on this right here, and we're gonna see each other, or rather hear from each other when we hear from each other. Yeah. Prince Easy signing out. Love you. Bye.